around one and all as we celebrate the magic of women in cinema at our Film Coven. We're your hosts, Kelli Mehan
and Melissa Woody, and today we are inducting and talking about all about Eve. Big one today, Kelli.
I was just about to say, Mel, how are you feeling? Are you as intimidated as I am by this one?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the best movies of all time. It's very critically acclaimed. It's on so many lists out there for different reasons. Yeah, it's a monster of a movie to talk about. So I'm a little intimidated.
And I think that's the thing. I think you hear about its prestige before you see it. It's not one I think you stumble upon. I think it's one you seek out.
When I first watched this movie, I wasn't fully sold on Anne Baxter. I was way more the Bette Davis when I first watched it. But it's interesting because on this watch, it's almost a complete opposite experience where I was fully sold with her performance this time around. But yeah, so I saw it a few years ago, and this is only my second time seeing it, and I think I liked it more on this watch than my first watch.
I don't remember the first time I've watched it, there's no sort of it was a Sunday and I was this and blah, blah, blah. It was just I'm going through classics and let's watch it. So I'd say early 20s. And then I rewatched it when I was going through all the AFI, five or so years ago. And then now this time. And I had very, very similar experience to you, where it's not even so much like the first time I liked Bette Davis, the next time I liked Anne Baxter. It was just more what I was expecting from the movie. So the first time going in, you know nothing about it. You know, you don't even know really the plot, I think, going into it. Or you know it's about actresses. That's the most of what you get. So when you watch it, I was really blindsided by the Eve character. Not really. I had, just no idea what was coming.
Yeah.
Then the second time, it had been a little while. So I was watching it again, and it wasn't until about midway through, I'm like, oh, that's right. They really did start laying the groundwork. And so I remember sort of looking for it, but not really. And just more, I was the same, enjoyed my ride a bit more now that I sort of knew what was coming. Almost like a murder mystery in that sense, where once you sort of know what the hook is, you look for it then. So definitely this time now, I'm purposely looking to see what breadcrumbs had been laid. Was the Eve character that way the whole way through? Can I see through it? Who's picking up on it earlier? But more so than that, what I thought it was going to be this watch was looking for the Eve character. What I found in myself was now I take away from this movie about aging gracefully, about being a more mature woman. And yes, that is a huge through line, but I think it wasn't the plot line. It wasn't the A plot line for me previously.
Yeah.
And now I can't not think of this movie as a movie about aging as a woman. And Mel, I don't know if you're with me, if you know where I'm going to be going with this.
I hope so. I have opinions.
You got to say that the substance takes so much influence from this. Let's go. This is 1950s version of the substance for sure. Mel, what did you think?
Yeah, no, but I think maybe that was why I enjoyed it more this time around. So, spoiler alert, The Substance is my favorite film of 2024, and I've seen it now 5 times, and I'm obsessed with it. So yes, I very much was thinking about it the entire length of this film, and I was just like, yes, this is great. Eve is the Sue, and Margot is the Elizabeth, I very much was thinking of The Substance on this watch, which was fun.
You got to think that, how do you pronounce the director's name?
Corley Ferget.
You got to say that she's inspired by this, because it's just, it's too similar. And I'm not saying that these two movies are the only ones that are an ingenue overtaking an actress's spot, but a lot of the DNA is there in both the movies. So that was the plot point I enjoyed so much this watch through, is the Margot Channing, Bette Davis, almost meta-ness of what's happening. So that's what I think people love about Eve, and what it's really most lauded for is just this dense script. This script is
good.
Freaking amazing. There is not, for a 2-hour something movie, there is not a second wasted. There is no line like that is not with intent. The way these characters are crafted. I do love Bette Davis and Margot Channing. But my favourite part of the movie by far is George Sanders, Addison DeWitt.
I am Addison DeWitt. I'm nobody's fool, least of all yours.
Oh yeah, that voice. It's so good.
I'm so happy you said that, because like now that I've been like in the Disneyness of it all.
Yes.
And when I go back and watch these movies now, I make the connections. I'm like, oh, so that's such and such and such. So when I saw George Sanders in the credits, I'm like, it's Shere Khan. It's Shere Khan. And now I can't, when I'm looking at him, like it's all I'm hearing is it. But I've had this like list in my head of my 2 favorite voices of all time, female and male. Female favorite voice, Julie Andrews.
You see, in every job that must be done, there is an element of fun.
Hands down. Just like I'm talking speaking voice. Favorite male voice, Peter O'Toole.
He married out of love a woman out of legend.
Okay.
Because I just really do like that British dialect, and probably I really enjoy also classically trained actors. I like very articulate voices. But yeah, for this big bass voice.
Well done.
Oh, and to start the movie with the narration.
And no brighter light has ever dazzled the eye than Eve Harrington. Eve. But more of Eve later. All about Eve, in fact.
I just thought such a good character. Who was your favorite character of the film?
I think on this watch it was Eve. I mean, I think it goes back and forth. Again, I think I was on a Bette Davis high the first time I watched the movie.
She's a Bette Davis high.
Exactly.
She's got Bette Davis eyes.
I'd watched a bunch of her movies at like kind of in a row, and so I really do love her. There's just something about Bette Davis, like her delivery. I feel like in the movies I've seen so far of hers, where she kind of has like this brashness, and like I like her. I don't even know how to fully describe her voice, but I really like her voice as well. It's like it's a little bit raspy, kind of. It's like a lower. I don't know. I enjoy when she speaks. She's a very compelling actress. I think on this watch, I think Eve was my favorite character. Yeah, I was pretty blown away by the performance that Anne Baxter does, and just this Eve, man, she's gonna take her husband. She's gonna take.
Comes.
She's gonna take it all.
Let's talk about Eve first. It is all about Eve, and then I did prefer the Bette Davis character as well, so we'll circle back to her. Is it what Anne Baxter's doing as Eve, or just what the Eve character's journey throughout the film that is interesting you most?
I think it's a combination of both. I think, like you said, this time around, I think seeing it on a second viewing, you see the breadcrumbs more. I feel like I missed maybe some things on an initial watch that like she had a hand in, like there's the manipulation
Absolutely.
that she does. I would say it's like a combination of both. This is why it's very great to rewatch movies, because I just remember feeling on my first watch, I felt underwhelmed by Anne Baxter, and she wasn't giving it to me, but like this time she was giving it to me, and like I got it, like it clicked on this viewing her performance and
because
what the character's doing.
You don't get the first time that she's meant to be playing it so subtle and so underhanded, because when that villain turn comes, when do you think the villain turn is? Because there's 2 points.
I think she, from the start, I think that...
Oh, no. I mean, it's definitely, she's been planned and conniving the whole way, yes.
Sure.
But where do you think she starts to show her hand, or where do you sort of click? Like, oh, I see what's happening here.
Probably the scene of the midnight call with Bill and Margot, like how she had set that up. I think that's the moment where also I think Margot's seeing her true colors, because before that, I think she just liked that concept and idea of having this woman really admire her, because Margot's so like self-involved and like she's such a diva. Like that's the feeling I got every time she's on screen. I was like, this diva, like she's just
work hunty, like
like very that. I think she was blinded prior to that scene of like Eve's intentions and like her motivations, because I think she was just like, oh, like this sweet little nothing girl was, you know, obsessed with me, and I like that feeling of like feeling desired. I would say, yeah, the phone call would be like the turning point for me. What about you? What scene or moment?
You are more astute than I am. See, I'm very much not an observant person. I am not a judge of character. Oh no, I am way too self-involved to realize what's going on around me.
Okay, sorry, keep going.
No, I think a big part of that is I am a very trusting person. I am not a very good liar. I don't like being lied to, so I cannot pick up on people's ulterior motives. So the fact that you pick up on the phone call, like, props to you, mama. Because for me, and I agree that that's where Margot gets the inkling, that's where she gets irked, because... Yeah. And this is, again, why it's such a dense film that I still didn't even really pick up on the fact that she didn't realize it wasn't Bill's birthday and Eve had sort of set her up. Like, I don't get that. From my... I don't mean I don't get it. I think that's great screenwriting. It's just me as myself as a person didn't pick up on it. So it's really not until she starts being so overt in her intentions, and I would say it's the bathroom scene for me when she starts blackmailing people, when she really starts, like, she's chess master. She has laid all the pieces on the board, and now in that bathroom scene, she, like, moves probably... Who's Celeste Holmes? Karen. She's either like a bishop or a knight. She's not really the queen, like, because Margot would be the queen. So she would be like one of the key pieces that protects your queen. Like, she moves that piece into play by saying, if you do not get me the part I want in your husband's play, I'm going to tell Margot about, and again, another absolute key point I did not pick up the first time is that Karen intentionally ran the gas tank low so Margot would not attend a performance and Eve would be the understudy. But she essentially intends to divulge that information to Margot, expose Karen as a liar. In the ladies' room, it's a standoff to start. And Karen presents this really strong front. But Eve just sort of starts being so persuasive. This is where you see the act, because the whole way she's had this voice down here. Mm-hmm. And she's had this really meek and mild act. And it's been very like, oh, I would never offend you, Miss Channing. Oh, I could never do as good a job as that. Oh, I've just read the lines.
Oh, I could watch you play that last scene 1,000 times. Cry every time.
And so when she's talking about the part of Cora to Karen, she starts going, Cora is my part to play. And she starts hitting it a bit harder.
Cora is my part. You've got to tell Lloyd it's for me.
And I think that's where, and it's meant to be that way, and that's what I love about this script, is that I think there's only like 40 minutes left of the movie, and you're starting to see the villain angle, because the start of the film opens up with Eve getting all these accolades, and each four of these of our key cast members are glaring daggers at her. So the whole sort of way you're going like, why? And this is when she shows her hand, basically.
I completely agree with, like, yeah, the vocal change and just, like, the threatening tone to Karen, kind of like, okay, she's not messing around. Like, she is cutthroat and she's going to do anything she can to get that part. and just the manipulation of it. Because I don't, this is what I mean. I don't think I fully picked up on the phone call scene in the first watch, and same with this a little bit about like how Karen was really the one who like sabotaged Margot,
Exactly.
but it was because of Eve's influence of that decision. I think Eve's persuasiveness to other people doing her bidding. I'm just like, damn girl. Like, I think the scene that really sold it to me this time around, and also just made me realize really from the beginning how manipulative she is that meeting with Margot at the very beginning. Her
the dressing room scene.
Yeah, her sharing her sob story. She had a husband who died in the war, and that like going to Margot's shows just really like saved her life, essentially. And it's like this very compelling, persuasive speech, and I'm like, oh, okay, like this is the performance of her life, like starting right here, like, and even probably before that, with all the like times that she had been seeing the show, and just like making those steps to hopefully maybe meet Margot or get her foot in the door. Yeah, I was way more convinced too by that like compelling speech she gives. I'm just like, just the music as well. I think that kind of adds to her character too, before the bathroom scene that you mentioned, where like I feel like every time she talks, it's like in this like low kind of soft tone with like melodramatic music of like, poor me.
And then one night, Margot Channing came to play in Remembrance. And I went to see it. Well, here I am.
And then it kind of like,
yes.
but then it like escalates, you know, as the film goes on. But yeah, I think that just initial meeting was like a huge scene for me this time around. What about you?
Well, see, I was looking for the breadcrumbs there, and I completely was again still blindsided. It wasn't until Addison started fishing for the information later on to catch her out in a lie. Like, I didn't even think that would be a lie, because I did think sort of like, oh yeah, she's got nothing to live for and this is what she's found, and becomes, maybe she just has like an obsessive personality type or something like that. Like, I didn't even really until later on when, see, this is why, like, for all the Nancy Drew I've read, I cannot.
Yes, Nancy Drew.
I need to wait until the end of the book for all the Hercule Poirot of it all to be like, it was you, and you did this and this and that, and this is your motive, and this is how you set it up. And I go, yeah. There's only a few things I'd be like, I knew that. Whereas like that was not coming out. That was not coming out this watch until, yeah, the characters did start fishing for it all. I did start to pick up on it when also that it is that turn of where she becomes the understudy. I could start seeing her manipulating the men. Mm-hmm. I could start seeing it, but not until... I didn't see the full of it all until it just happened to be that all the press reporters came to the one show Margot wasn't at that she was at. And really until, as I sort of said, Addison was my favorite character. So until he started really becoming a lot more involved and it started to become a lot more cat and mouse between everyone that I saw it. But right at the end, he spills it out. Or the breakdown.
He was a liar! He was a liar! Answer my question. Weren't you paid to get out of town?
How much did you enjoy, like, okay, not the abusive side of it all,
sure,
but more the verbal smackdown that he gives her? If you've ever played Phoenix Wright, if you've ever played Danganronpa, weird cuts for right now. But basically any of these sort of detective games, which again is why I should be better at this, and I am not, when you start presenting the evidence at these people that have committed murders or committed felonies and they start to crack, that's what I sort of love to see. So her full breakdown that he has unraveled her lie. And he says something like along the lines of, I am not one of these children that you can be playing games with. And I'm like, ooh! And she just loses it, flops on the bed, like, because he's at her with, you never been in San Francisco, I've done my homework on you, you have been run out of town for being with a married man. So it really wasn't until then that I knew half of the extent of what she's done.
This scene I thought was really well done. Like you had mentioned, like the words he was kind of using to cut her down. And I think it ultimately does show, though, and like he says, like, I own you, or
you belong to me. That is
thank you.
So gross, but it is. He caught her.
And you realize and you agree how completely you belong to me?
Yes, Edison.
I think they're somewhat equals. Like, in a way, like he mentioned, he says something to the effect of, like, we're kind of, like, of the same cloth. I don't remember exactly the words.
They're both, like, a bit heartless. They're both very ruthless. They're both very cunning. They only care about their ambitions. Very Slytherin energy from what I was picking up.
Yes, very Slytherin. I thought the scene was really well done. It is, like, sad in a way, because kind of, it's like Eve, you didn't get fully away with it almost. Like you got caught. But
she was the traitor.
Yeah, she was the traitor, but then he's like, hey, I'm recruiting. If you want to join.
She starts to laugh at him, and he gives her a bit of physical assault, which is very not funny, but very, I guess, of the time. And she storms to the door and says, get out. And he gives one of my favorite lines. It's like, please let me throw down. Like, this character's great in the lines he delivers, but not a whole... It's like liking the bad guy, basically.
Yeah.
But he gives this line of, you are too short to pull off that gesture.
Get out.
You're too short for that gesture.
And I just thought, whoever wrote that line, amazing, because for a movie about plays, it's written like a play, which is just like that double layer of everything that is just so fantastic. And it gives lines like that people wouldn't really say in real life, but when you are writing characters that are writing, you get to give that are writers, you get to give them the best dialogue, because it can come off a bit more naturally than what it is. Because anyone else saying that line in any other movie sounds absolutely ridiculous. But in this movie, it fits so well. And he says, you must go out and give the performance of your life. What do you think? We're jumping all around. Yeah. But this ending is also such a huge part of the Eve character. So I'll go from when she accepts the award to then going back to the hotel. What was your take on how our Eve character sort of ends the film, how she enjoys her triumph, so to speak?
She wins this prestigious acting award, because it foreshadows, because like we start the movie there, but then that's how we end it. And I love that she's like giving these like thank you like messages in her speech, and like she's like really convinced herself, like the way that she's performing even in this speech, like that's the thing. Eve is always performing even if she's not on stage, and like this is a clear example of it, of like, girl, you're not in the theta right now, like just be genuine. But she's not. Like, she's saying like these really heartfelt like thank yous, but like because of everything that's just happened in the entire film, you're just like, girl, like nothing you're saying is real.
Hate your guts.
Yes, and I love how it pans to each person, and they're just like.
Betty, this is what I love about Betty Davis. You talk about the voice. Yeah, she's just like her facial expressions are unmatched.
So good. And then going back to the hotel where there's this woman that's asleep, has like snuck into her room, and it very gives me Mean Girls. Like the cycle continues.
The next generation. I wrote the same. Not Mean Girls, but I thought very similar, and that's exactly what I'm thinking. The cycle continues. That's exactly what I wrote.
I will say, The ending shot of this movie, oh, it's so good. Like the way that they were able to film that, like all the images of that woman like looking in the mirror with Eve's award, like just the fantasy of like I'm gonna be the next Eve type of thing. Yeah, no,
directly mimicking Eve's behavior earlier in the film when she holds up Betty Davis's dress to herself and looks at herself. Everyone's held up some item of clothing to themselves, whether we're shopping or something like that, and sort of like, I feel like that's what you used to do when you went to the mall. You and I are of the mall age.
Yeah.
Or even I've just done it in Disneyland, like when I hold up the costumes to myself and pretend that I am a pretty princess. Because it is sort of letting ourselves dream of what can be. And that is one of the breadcrumbs I did pick up on about just not how ruthless Eve is, but what the intentions of Eve are, is that she sees herself as a star. And okay, I haven't seen Pearl, but I'm assuming it gives me something like that. Or
yeah, I would say, yeah, Pearl is very giving Eve energy, or Eve is giving very Pearl energy. I'm not sure which direction, but yeah, very, yes, you know, I'm a star.
Please, I'm a star!
Also on that ending scene, yes, with the girl, Eve does finally get what she wants. She has her awards. She's going out to Hollywood for a movie. Her demeanor, like the whole facade's just cracked, and she's very curt with Addison. And when she goes back to the hotel, it's like she is a completely different person. She is now seems a bit jaded, or seems like she's not doing the mild, oh yes, it's, well, like it's very, that sort of is what she's giving off now. How would you describe sort of the personality shift that we see?
I would completely agree. It actually kind of reminds me of like where when Eve first becomes like Margot's like assistant, what, like she's kind of doing all these odd end things for her. It's giving me that, because at that point in the movie, Margot's just kind of like lounging on the couch, very like whatever, and I feel like that's almost where Eve's at this point, because she's kind of just like lounging on the chair, very like, whatever, I'm exhausted, I don't care. Like it just seems like she's not as like passion filled as she like once was at the beginning of the movie. It feels like, I feel like this journey has really tired her out on a lot of different levels, I think. And I think jaded's a good word, because she just kind of seems like, was it really all worth it? That's kind of the feeling I get from her.
Yeah, and I think she's believing her own pomp and her own ego now, where she is I am a huge star, and like, yes, of course there would be people here, and just sort of like feeling like it's the norm now. Like, yes, here I am. This is my life now. Let's talk about the Margot Channing character. What are your major takeaways on Betty Davis in this role?
I mean, like you said, face is unmatched. I think this is probably one of her best performances, if not her best. Again, I haven't seen all of Betty Davis's work, but like this is definitely up there with her performances. I think the Margot character very much like symbolizing aging in the entertainment business, and like you said, there is this like meta element to the film, because at this point in Betty Davis's career, it was kind of declining at this point. She wasn't really quite sure what she was going to be doing with her career, and like this opportunity came along, and you know, she read the script and it felt like one of the best scripts ever.
But by 1950, Davis's career was starting to resemble a black hole. She had made a series of box office flops and found herself no longer in demand. After an infamous battle with Jack Warner, Davis parted ways with the studio that had been her home for 18 years.
So people thought, well, that's the end of Betty Davis, and she indeed was no spring chicken.
She thought she was through. Did you know that? 41 years old. Marvelous.
Darryl Zanuck was offering her what sounded like the role of a lifetime. After reading Joe Mankiewicz's script, she was sure of it.
Again, very Demi Moore in the substance, like because Demi Moore was a huge star, and like again, she's kind of been out of the light though the last several years, and then yeah, read this great script, now in this great movie. And yeah, it's very giving me that.
The substance was just sent my way for consideration with the caveat that they didn't want to tell me anything about it, that I just needed to read it. It's very rare to read something where you don't already know where it's going.
Right.
And so I was quite surprised continually, as anybody who's seen the film can attest. I was, in all honesty, equally moved and kind of blown away.
Initial thoughts was, I think this is definitely one of the earlier Bette Davis films that I've watched, and you just think the whole way through, like, oh, I get it. Like, it's very, when I saw Marilyn Monroe and Some Like It Hot, like, oh, I get the movie magic. I get why you're such a staple. I get what presence you're bringing to the screen and why this person's so unique. As you sort of said, the delivery, the tone, the faces, everything to do with it. Faces. I agree. Like, that was definitely the most enjoyable part of what I found it all, because we're still having this conversation to this day about how there's not so many well-written or great roles written for aging women, as opposed to all these young ingenue roles. And what I didn't realize, though, is that she's just turned 40. And I'm like, well, now I'm closer to the Bette Davis role than the Anne Baxter role. That was a bit of a wake-up call, but there are things in there that I'm very relating to. What she's speaking about being a married lady, about having direction in your life, about a work-life balance, I think she's even talking about. What I thought was so progressive and so cool is that her paramour, her love interest, is a director who's 8 years her junior. And she's insecure about it the whole way. She's insecure about other women in general. I just found all that so true. Like, it was leaping off the page and off the screen. And I just thought, what a fantastic way to talk about it, to deal with it. And one of my favorite scenes of hers is when she's having that bit of a meltdown about Anne, and he's like literally trying to shake some sense into her. It's like, no, I choose you. I love you. Like, why are you being so insecure? Why can't you see this? And he starts to walk away, and she's like, are you going to go see her? Like, it's just all consuming. And part of it, I think, is the Eve character is doing a few of these things. But the other part of it is just that psychological side of it, that she just can't stop these thoughts and feelings. What were some of your favorite Margot scenes that we got throughout the film?
I just want to comment really quick about Bill and Margot's relationship.
Yeah.
It was fun to read that in real life, they had a real life romance that led to a marriage.
Oh!
The moment she laid eyes on her new on-screen love interest, 34-year-old Gary Merrill, she realized that she and Margot shared something else very important in common: their taste in men.
There was chemistry going there. This was a hot and heavy relationship that was going on, which of course did nothing but improve the aspect as represented in the film.
Which I could really see that chemistry, like you're saying.
Oh,
yeah, it was fire, and literally in real life, that's what happened. That was fun to read. We haven't talked about it yet, but I mean, we get
the scene.
We get one of the most iconic quotes in cinema history: "Fasten your seatbelts. It's gonna be a bumpy night."
Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
Like, it's so good.
Fantastic. That is a very key scene of this party. We haven't been able to talk about it yet, but come on. This Edith Head dress, this Bette Davis brown dress with the fur sleeves, with pockets, with the most flattering neckline you can give a lady, with the like décolletage showing. It's so powerful. It's so gorgeous, this costume. And she really does, glittering brooch on the chest. She really does look like the belle of the ball, like the mistress of the house, like she's in charge. It's a power outfit. And this party scene, she goes off. Like,
she does.
She gets plastered. She's
100%.
sitting at the piano. I've got a soft spot for a lady who loves like a clear liquid in a martini glass, like very Karen Walker from Will and Grace, which I just love to death, like just downing the gin. We've got a problem. Do you know you've only got domestic gin? My guests won't care as long as it burns.
They're domestic too, and they don't care what they drink as long as it burns.
Just little, that's why I love this on a rewatch. That's what I mean. There's no line that isn't either hilarious or moving the story forward, and you can't catch them all on the first watch. You have to rewatch it. It's just too dense. But the fact that she does her own Casablanca, play it, Sam, like play it again. I played it 4 times already.
Keep it going.
It is very that when like that meme of when I replay the sad songs, the sad part didn't hurt me enough the first time. Like when you just wallow in your misery at your own party. I was living for Ernest in this scene.
Yeah, she kind of, I feel like one of the highlights of this character is the party scene. Like I think there's just several moments of her just being hilarious. I really like the quote. I'm gonna butcher it, but it's something about like, we're all busy bees with our stingers and making honey every night.
You're in a beehive, pal, didn't you know? We're all busy little bees, full of stings, making honey day and night. Aren't we, honey?
It's something like that. I just, again, the way that they use the words in this movie is just great. I've seen earlier on that we haven't really talked about, that's like, it's minor, but I like the quote about like Bette Davis like references Eve as a loose sheep in the like concrete jungle, or
the concrete jungle. Yep.
Suddenly I've developed a big protective feeling toward her, a lamb loose in our big stone jungle.
It's like something like that, but then like Bill twists it in like the next scene where he's like, you know, be careful of that loose lamb. It's like the same verbiage is like used.
Keep your eye on her. Don't let her get lonely. She's a loose lamb in a jungle.
The way they talk about Eve throughout the movie is really interesting, and the way that she starts to build relationships, friendships, and then the way they're lost along the way too. Because to start, she's described as a lamb. I think Bette Davis says like that mousy one in the trench coat.
The mousy one with the trench coat and the funny hat.
Throughout the film, she's referenced to as the kid.
The kid.
And that just irritates Bette Davis to no end. It's like, stop calling her that. Oh, the one time she just goes, just shut up about Eve.
I want everybody to shut up about Eve. Just shut up about Eve. That's all I want.
Well, Bertie, her wardrobe woman, is onto her from the get.
Yeah.
But the way that the people are protective of her, whether that's because she's so young or because like Karen alludes that they've seen Margot do something similar before, but Karen's very protective of her until she isn't. The men definitely start to get toyed with. Bill, she tries it on with Bill as the director, but that's a no-go.
What I go after, I want to go after. I don't want it to come after me.
Yeah.
But she definitely hooks her fangs into Lloyd, all that. So it's just funny how long it sort of took for some of the people to catch on. Karen gives great narration. Karen and Addison DeWitt are our key narrators through the film, and it's really great to see how these women are perceived through their eyes and sort of what they're recollecting versus what's happened in real time. And so at the time, like, Karen is so blindsided by a lot of it, but she's sitting at the theater and she's like, Bill and Lloyd are fighting even more than usual, and it was always about Eve. So it's just all those little pieces are there, all that intuition's there. But I'm still always really sort of shocked when it does sort of come about when she says, Lloyd and I are going to be married, he's leaving Karen.
Lloyd Richards. He's going to leave Karen. We're going to be married.
And all that. And that's where we talked about the facade really cracking down, but just how thoroughly she's convinced herself of her plan and how it's going to work is just, so odd. But it does come from the way we want to see people the way we describe people, and isn't it just really interesting when expectations of people don't live up to the reality of what's happening? So I think that's another interesting point that the movie's sort of telling us at this time.
I think ultimately the Eve character, I think all of this is coming from a deep place of wanting to be loved and desired. I think a key scene that reveals that is, it's like they're all on the stairway kind of hanging out at the party, and she just talks about how like the idea of like performing in front of a audience and like how hundreds of people every night would like love me.
Every night the different hundreds of people love you. They smile, their eyes shine, you've pleased them. They want you.
And just, so I really think it's like a deep, like seated, rooted issue of like, she just wants to be loved, and I think desired from people, because obviously we don't fully know what Eve's backstory is. It is a mystery because obviously she lied about what she told us at the beginning of the story, but I think the assumption is she probably doesn't have many friends or family, that community around her. But I don't know, that's what I get from the Eve characters.
Even just her real name, I think, was something very plain, or possibly from an immigrant background. It sounds like no parental figures, and to be with a married man before she's very young and being paid to be out of town. I think you get that gist. What I do want to touch on as well, what I'm so loved about the Margot character and was happy to get out of it this time, how content she ended the film, because I think nowadays you would play on how melodramatic is and have her have a complete breakdown, get shunned, ruin all the relationships and everything. And I really appreciate that that's not the way it happens, that we do have that scene I talked about earlier where she's stormed in on the auditions. She performs with music and fire. The amount of times she says that Eve performs, it's music and fire, and she's doing it the way I didn't want to do it.
A mess of music and fire. All that fire and music being turned off.
What fire and music?
You wouldn't understand.
So yes, we do get that big turning point, but how great when she does make up with Bill, when she's having lunch with Karen and Lloyd and everything, she just looks happy, and she talks, I'm going to be a married lady and I don't need it anymore just to fill my nights, and I'm done playing the ingenue roles. And Karen starts laughing because she's just been blackmailed to give this Cora role to Eve. But I just thought how nice we could have our character come to that conclusion and be okay and not end up in ruin by the end, that she's sitting at this table. And what I think the other thing is, this movie takes place in a very short span. I think it's months, because they say like last October, it's within the span of a year. And it's just it's just nice that the Bette Davis character doesn't end in a big jealous ruin, and doesn't end cutting off all ties, and ends in a good place. And yes, this thing has happened with her. Yes, she was used, and yes, she's made this mistaken judgment, but it seems like she's going to be okay, and that's just what I need to believe. She's pissed to be there, but she's not walking away with nothing.
I think ultimately, kind of what, like I was just saying about the Eve character, where like I think it's this feeling and desire of wanting to be loved and accepted. I think that's very much what's happening with the Margot character too, but I think her arc is realizing like, oh, I don't need to get that from the theater, or I don't need to like act in such a cutthroat way to get that feeling. I can actually just get that feeling because I have a man who loves me, and I love myself, and I have friends, and
I'm talented, and I can play anything. I don't need to keep going for these younger roles, and I can age and be okay and just be a mature woman. It's nice. It's very inspirational.
It's her self-realization moment. Yeah.
Very. Now, is there any behind the scenes or technical aspects you really wanted to talk about?
The main thing I wanted to mention was the All About Eve story is based on a short story and radio show from Mary Orr called The Wisdom of Eve. I've not checked it out, and I'm keen to give it a read and see what it's all about, but just wanted to give her that shout that, like, yeah, I think this is a great concept and story.
There's always that touch of realism there where there's, as we sort of said, there's the cycle. There's always the person behind you, no matter what workplace you are in. Like, there's the person coming up, and you do always have these sort of manipulative people and cutthroat people in your life. So I think it is a good DNA to play around with.
This movie was highly praised and like critically acclaimed even at the time, and obviously it still is today. I think like on Rotten Tomatoes it's at 99% or something, which is like amazing. Like, this is a film from 1950. For the Oscars, they received a record 14 nominations, and then they won 6 awards. So they won Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor, your boy.
So deserved. So deserved.
Best Screenplay and Best Costume Design. And Best Sound Recording.
Is this the first time they had the Best Actresses from like both leads nominated, or am I getting something of that wrong?
I'll have to fact check, but I'm like pretty sure that's what I read.
In February 1951, for the first time in history, 2 leading ladies from the same film were on the ballot together.
But yeah, I'll fact check, but I'm like pretty sure, yeah, this was one of the first times where like two leads from a film.
Which is, again, really interesting considering the content of the movie. It's just so incredibly fitting.
Yeah. Anne Baxter actually like fought for this nomination because she's like, this is my movie. Like, the movie's literally called All About Eve. Like, I need to be nominated in a leading role.
Anne Baxter wanted the studio to nominate her as Best Actress instead of Best Supporting Actress, a move that would put her in direct competition with Bette Davis. It was yet another in a series of examples of how scenes from the film would resonate in the stars' real lives.
There's definitely a meta element to this movie of just like how cutthroat the entertainment business can be. I think this is just like a little snapshot of what that looks like. So I think it still like runs true today. I also think we didn't really talk about it, but I do think this movie does kind of tackle the topic of like theater versus movies, because kind of how the movie ends is like Eve's gonna go off to Hollywood, and I think there's even some verbiage throughout the movie that's like a lot of people don't come back. I mean, I think there's always been this conversation around acting of like, what's a true actor? Sure. Like people who are on the stage versus film versus what TV. You know, there's all these different mediums now that you can act on, and I mean, I think all of them are valid and great. But I think it definitely is like talking about that for sure. But yeah, I mean, this is just a classic movie. I highly recommend it if you haven't seen it.
My final thoughts is that isn't it just so freaking delightful when you hear a movie that's hyped to death and it's just amazing. This is definitely one of those ones that made me fall in love with classics as a genre, so to speak. It's my type of movie where it's dialogue thick. It sets place in the entertainment industry, which always tickles me. Like, anytime we have a movie about movies or a movie about the entertainment. Young Marilyn Monroe, love that. Like, such a minor little role, but still adds something to it, adds a lot of these plot points and a lot of these funny truths about Hollywood. Yes, as I sort of said, I loved all the cat and mouse game of it all, putting it all together, and just those classic actors and actresses and performances. And it's definitely one that I think deserves its legacy, deserved all those nominations. And as you sort of said, it's funny. It's one, like I mentioned at the top of it, you do need to seek out, and I hope people do. I just don't remember seeing it around. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. You grew up in America. Did you see it playing on like TCM, or what avenues did you have?
I only saw it fairly recently, but it is one of those movies I had heard about forever. I had no idea what it was about though, but like it feels like it's a part of like just like the film lexicon of like just the history of movies. Like it's just one you kind of hear, but yeah, I don't know if I fully remember ever seeing it on TCM or whatever, or like AMC or what have you, maybe, but like I didn't see it until recently. But yeah, like it just feels like one that's there.
Why? That's what I'm trying to get at. Why? Like, is it just something like that was like, I do not remember ever seeing a VHS cover, a DVD cover. I don't ever remember seeing it in our TV guide. Like, So, but then it is just so profoundly well known, as you said, in our film and cinema history, that anytime it's on so many lists, anytime you start deep diving, it is it's a must watch. But how do we get it to be more well known, like more word of mouth? Like, I don't know.
I don't know. I don't have an answer.
We do shows on it, we do reviews on it, and we keep promoting it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Mel, it's always just so amazing when we get to talk about this. And as we sort of mentioned at the top, this is one we've been wanting to do for so long, because two absolutely amazing characters and performances we get from this movie. Where can people find us?
People can find us here, and if you're watching, thank you. Feel free to subscribe for more if you'd like. Otherwise, we are on Instagram, X, TikTok, and Letterboxd, of course.
Yes.
And until next time, everyone, stay magical.
Slow curtain, the end.